think we can all agree that Thomas Jefferson was a fairly smart guy. Principal author of the Declaration of Independence, third president of the United States. He wasn't the most astute businessman. He died deeply in debt and was trying to get the government to hold a public lottery in his failing years in order to save him from himself. Then again, every individual has their foibles and their failings. We look past those as the years go by when we seek and remember the truly notable of a life. In Jefferson's case for this discussion, it's worthy to remember something he once said that certainly applies to America at this very moment. Quote, "I like the dreams of the future better than the history of the past." Unquote. Perfect for America and the political pustulence being tossed about in 2016, because it's the history of the past that has brought us to the point of a presidential election that will carry historical notes which future generations will study, tear asunder, and in many ways scholars will look at themselves and wonder out loud, what the heck were these people thinking? There will be a name for this period of American history. Some believe it will be regeneration. Others might consider rebirth. More are coming to terms with the title of revolt, and that likely will change American politics forever. Let us then turn the page, deal with this from the man with that historical perspective on American presidents. Also, New York Times bestselling author of Last Act, The Final Years and Emerging Legacy of Ronald Reagan. Our turn this week with Craig Shirley. All right, Craig, here comes the history now. In your opinion, are we truly now living smack dab in the middle of an historical revolt of astounding proportions?
Ed, yes and no. We are in the middle of a revolt. Republican Party leaders are gnashing their teeth. They're chewing their fingernails down to the nub. They're tearing their hair out. Whatever cliche you want to throw out there, they're doing it. On the other hand, is that there have been party revolts in the past. Famously, in 1912, Teddy Roosevelt came out of retirement to challenge Taft, President Taft, because he was so dismayed with his policies, challenged him in the Republican primaries, lost, and then bolted to form the Bull Moose Party. 1964, Dwight Eisenhower gave a very lukewarm endorsement to Barry Goldwater. Al Smith, who was the Democratic nominee in 1928, famously lost in a landslide to Herbert Hoover, then supported FDR's Republican opponents in 1932 and 1936, including Alf Landon. Of course, Reagan didn't support Gerald Ford in 1976 after losing the convention. So the point is that there have been other times, and of course, Tom Eagleton was famously thrown off the ticket with George McGovern in 1972. So there have been times in the past where, Ed, is that there's something approaching party revolt has happened before, outright revolt, but I agree with you. I think this is new and uncharted territory. We don't know what's going to happen day to day.
Is it fair to say that we have never seen a time in American political history when the individual who is set to become the leader of the nation, the president, has so dumped on the members of his own party down the line, a Speaker of the House, a gentleman who once ran for president, that we have never seen this sort of absolute earthquake split?
Well, I would never compare individuals. I would never compare Donald Trump to Ronald Reagan, for instance, but I would compare atmospherics and situations. Goldwater didn't entirely unify the party at the 64 convention in San Francisco. Bill Scranton and George Romney and others famously walked on Goldwater, but he also had some choice words for them as they were leaving behind his campaign. But no, I think you're right. I think this is new and this is unprecedented, and historians will tear this campaign apart, trying to discern the real meaning of it.
What does it say to you when we're now talking about the fact that senior party officials, according to ABC News, are frustrated, confused, and they are thinking about what they will do to replace Donald Trump on the ballot if he drops out? Of course, we're talking about Rule Number 9 in the RNC bylaws that talk about filling vacancies in nomination. This is astounding, but I can't see this. I can't see this happening under any circumstance.
But Ed, is that who a year ago thought Donald Trump would be the nominee? Who a year ago thought Donald Trump would mow down 17 qualified primary opponents? Who a year ago thought that Hillary was going to be the nominee, or was certain that Hillary was actually going to be the nominee? This is new. This is unprecedented. We're all the wonderful cliches about breaking new ground or uncharted territory or whatever else. They all are applicable here.
But they are all applicable here. But let's get to this point right here. Would you see, I mean, certainly your knowledge of presidential history is very deep. Would you see, though, a Republican Party ever saying, let's get ready, we've got to be ready right now? First of all, I don't see Donald Trump dropping out, although some people seem to think that that's exactly what he wants to do. I don't see him doing that.
No.
But do you really think at this point we've got Republican power brokers who are sitting there thinking about their alternatives?
Well, they have in the past. You know, George McGovern was famously melting down after the whole McGovern fiasco and after his fiasco at his convention. And there was talk about party elders going to McGovern and asking him to step aside before he was slaughtered by Richard Nixon, which of course he was famously slaughtered by Richard Nixon. And there have been other times in the past where party elders. I remember in 1991 as their country was headed into recession, is that party elders were talking about going to George Bush and either asking him to step aside or come up with some new economic program. He had an infamous meeting with a group of party leaders, and they were telling him how bad things were in the country. And Bush famously or notoriously said, he said, you know, if you're so smart, why aren't you president? Which is, you know, as everybody knows, George Bush sounds familiar, sounds accurate. So party leaders have fretted in the past about incumbents, about nominees, and about presidents. Not that they've ever been able to do anything about it, except in the case of Richard Nixon, when party elders, Goldwater and others, finally forced him to resign in August of '74.
Then let's talk about doing something about it here. About 90 seconds I have left. Here's a very simple question. In light of what we're facing at this moment and the Republicans are facing at this moment, in your opinion, using history as the backdrop, how do we best resolve it?
Well, it's got to start with Donald Trump. He's got to throw away his Twitter machine. He's got to stop using the personal pronouns I, me, and my, and start using the pronouns we, us, and ours.
But he won't do that. He won't do that. Well, let's just assume, and I know how dangerous assumptions are, but let's assume he doesn't.
On the wall, then he's doomed to lose. He's doomed to lose. Hillary's destined to make history unless he changes it. The campaigns are secondary, really. These are tests about the individual. The American people understand it's not about Paul Manafort. It's not about campaign commercials. It's about what they perceive in the man, or in this case, the woman. And do they have the right temperament? Do they have the right character? Do they have the right experience to become the next president of the United States? And Donald Trump is quickly answering that question by telling the American people no, just based on his behavior.
Knowing full well that you can't force him to do anything. Isn't that the thing that really sticks in the craw, the people in the RNC? You might be able to force somebody to do something, but about 25 seconds I have left here, he's not going to be forced by anybody.
No, well, but then that's kind of an indication of his character, isn't it? Is that good presidents, Harry Truman once said that a president has to say yes and no, but mostly no. And that's what a policy. But I think that he would also say, yes, I need to listen to my advisors. They're here because they want to win and they want what's best for me. And Donald Trump needs to decide that his advisors want what's best for him, and that's to win.
We've always talked about the fact, and people say that Donald Trump would hire the best advisors to get him through foreign policy, economics, the other issues that a president faces. They have to go back to that. You have to get the best advisors, and then you have to listen to them. A reminder once again, the book that gives you a real idea of what history is all about, Last Act, The Final Years and Emerging Legacy of Ronald Reagan. Craig Shirley, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll talk to you again next week. We are now history. I wonder what they'll say about this in many years, right? Rock on, true believers. Thanks for joining us. Good night and good luck.